Hello, welcome to Life Talk for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. I'm Mark Crutcher, president of Life Dynamics, and I'm here with the usual suspects, as always. Yes. My assistant, Renee. The usual suspects, as I always say, are lurking nearby.
And we are.
I'm not lurking. I might be sitting, but I'm not lurking the shadows.
You're lurking.
Hello, everybody.
That's Renee Hobbs, my assistant here at Life Dynamics, and my daughter, Sheila.
Yes.
And we've got a lot of stuff. We're going to be talking later on in the show to Mark Harrington from Created Equal about the issue of fetal disposal of the carcasses of the bodies they kill.
Yes.
The corpses. But first off, we mentioned last week we'd had Rusty Thomas on here. His son was dying, and we told everybody last week that he did in fact die.
Of bone cancer.
Of
yes.
bone cancer. And you and I and my wife Tulane went to his funeral on Friday.
Yes.
And we haven't had a whole lot of time to talk about it since then because of the holidays and so forth. But I was very impacted by that funeral, more so than I think any other funeral I've ever been to, other than the funeral of my own daughter that died.
I mean, it was sad, but there was such a celebration of his life,
Right.
and it was beautiful, honestly.
I got so much out of that. Just reinforced a lot of things that I'd thought, and some things I'd forgotten about, and I wish you had been able to go.
Well, I did watch it live online. They had it streaming on Facebook. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was an amazing event.
Yeah.
And
A lot of young kids there, lots of young kids, but you had to, you had to
I
expect
bet
that
you-
because he was 16.
I bet you 80% of that audience was under 20,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
And for those who weren't able to go, I'd say there was probably 800 to 1,000 people there, maybe.
Yeah.
It was an amazing turnout, especially considering it's in Waco and on a weekday. But it's on.
It's on Facebook on Rusty Thomas's Facebook page. I don't know. I'm sure it's streamed to other places, but Rusty was able to stand up there. After two people had given their message.
Flip Benham gave a message.
And then Matt
Truella. Yeah.
And he gave a charge to all the young people, which was so incredibly.
Yeah.
I can't even put words into it because they said that Jeremiah had passed the baton to his peers, and he was baptized a year ago, and he was a completely different person for that year.
Right.
And just the amazing things that he did, and preaching even when people didn't listen to him, didn't want to hear what he wanted to say, and he still stood up and did what God had asked him to do. So.
And a young man who had the really neatest personality that you ever saw, just real bubbly and vivacious, and never met a stranger, and just was obviously liked by everybody that knew him. All these kids that just loved him to death.
Right.
And to be struck down at the age of 16.
Yeah.
But we can't understand this stuff, especially as a parent, when you lose a child. And I remember someone told me our daughter that died only lived one day. She was born one day and died the next. And someone told me, he said, we don't understand it, but whatever purpose God had for her, she did.
Right.
She served that purpose.
That's
and I've talked to you about this many times, about it took me years to understand what that purpose was. But once I did, then I could see, okay,
Yeah.
she served her purpose.
Right.
And it was to influence me.
Right.
And she did. And didn't make me pro-life, because I'd been involved in the pro-life effort for many years when she died. But it changed a lot of things about me. Whatever the mission was that God put Jeremiah here to accomplish, he accomplished.
He did.
Well, and I think the important thing is that we see that his message continues, and I mean it's already been continuing
all
since
over the
his
world.
death. So
All over the world,
International,
people.
yeah.
Right. And when we were driving back, I think Tulane looked online, and 46,000 people had already started looking at that. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
But I want to encourage every person out there, for you, your entire family, your kids, whoever, to sit and watch that funeral. It's 2 hours long. But when it's over, you won't be saying, wow, that was long. You'll be saying, I wish this could go on for another 2 hours.
well, and they didn't call it a funeral. They said they called it Jeremiah's homecoming.
Homecoming, yes,
Yeah.
right.
That's neat.
Yeah, it was. But it was an amazing event, and I really want to encourage everybody to go and watch that, and we'll get Rusty on a future show here real quickly and have him bring us up to date with what's gone on since the funeral. But it was an amazing event.
Yes.
Anyway, there's a lot of things trending out there, and before we get to Mark Harrington, we want to go over a couple of these things. The Centers for Disease Control now is saying that STD rates are soaring, skyrocketing, I think is the term they used in the United States. 2.3 million new cases last year of syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, just last year alone. Highest number ever reported in the United States. Now they're blaming this on a lot of factors. More babies are being born with STDs. It's because their mothers are more likely to be infected.
Right.
Chlamydia detection could be getting better, so therefore more women are getting tested, and so that could account for some of it. They're claiming dating apps.
Well, that's understandable.
Yeah, if you're going to just get on the internet and find somebody and go have sex with them, then yeah, that's probably going to be
Apps like Tinder.
They're saying decreasing condom use, and they were saying STD-ridden New York, using condoms hardly at all. But of course, they're blaming it like the left always does, and make no mistake about it. The Centers for Disease Control is part of the godless left in this country, and we proved that years ago when I wrote Line 5.
Right. Well, and they're also blaming it on the Christians because we want to teach abstinence only.
Right.
And therefore, I guess these kids are rebelling, which in another poll not real long ago, they're saying that kids aren't having sex because they're staying at home and playing Xbox.
Playing games.
Playing games and streaming YouTube videos and whatever else. So which one is it?
Which one?
Know?
Yeah, who's to blame?
Right.
But you're right, and I was going to bring this question up. They don't want to talk about abstinence at all. That's old-fashioned or whatever. And but here's the point.
When you have Planned Parenthood out there not pushing for children having sex, then yeah, they wouldn't be.
They wouldn't be pushing abstinence. But wouldn't, if people were abstinent, how high would these things be? 0.
It would be, yeah.
Be a nice round number, 0. And so the one thing that's guaranteed to work every time it's tried, they don't want to talk about it. And you know why? They don't get paid for that. Right. They do not get paid for that.
That's right.
And you mentioned Planned Parenthood. They chimed in on this deal, talking about how there's no money out there and they're not getting enough government money.
Yeah, they
all
need more.
The massive budget cuts for all of the public health centers.
But here's an interesting question about this. Planned Parenthood claims that abortion is only 3% of their business. Now, they're lying through their teeth, and we've proven that right here on this show many times.
Yeah.
They're lying through their teeth, but let's say they're not lying. Let's take them at their word. They were willing to shut down their facilities rather than give up abortion not long ago. They were saying, if we can't do abortions, we will shut down our facilities. So in other words, what they were saying is, we've got this STD problem, we've got teenage pregnancy. We're willing to write all those people off if you don't let us do abortions.
Yeah, and they claim they care about women and, no, their bottom line is abortion.
Right.
No matter what, even if it only is 3%.
3%, they're lying.
Which is not true, but even if it was, they're still willing to write off women who they supposedly care about just so they can protect their bottom line.
What they're saying is, we won't give up 3% of our business to save all these people. We won't do that. They're not worth that much to us.
Exactly. And don't they already get enough money as it is? I mean, massive budget cuts.
They're still getting $1.5 million a day.
So what are they doing with that money?
$1.5 million a day goes to Planned Parenthood out of the federal budget alone. That doesn't count all the states and cities that might give them.
They need to be audited. Where is that money going?
They're opening up huge facilities.
Well, when you look at some of the salaries that some of these people make, it is obscene, some of the money that these guys make. But anyway, meanwhile, in Belgium, now they legalized basically what is lethal injection for euthanasia in 2002. And now the Belgium Federal Commission on the Control and Evaluation of Euthanasia has released a report. Deaths by legal euthanasia have increased nearly tenfold, 982%, from 235 in 2003 to 2,309 in 2017. just in 6 years, in 14 years, it's gone up
It's just,
tenfold.
yeah, I mean, it's just becoming more and more common, and it's just an every day you go to the doctor, you have some kind of terminal illness, or even if it's not terminal, but you don't want to supposedly put loved ones through,
Or you
a
want
lot
to
of
save,
grief.
you don't want to use up all the inheritance money.
That's right.
And
yeah.
we've had stories on that. Also, organ donation is an issue. Organ donation combined with active euthanasia was reported in 8 patients for the years 2016 and 2017. In other words, these people were killed in order to harvest their organs. In 2017, of those 2,309, excuse me, 375 were people whose deaths were not expected anytime in the near future.
Yeah. And and like some of those are coma patients, and on a daily basis, we hear about coma patients
wake up.
that were never expected to wake up, to actually wake up.
Yep.
And a bunch of those, they actually said, a bunch of those coma patients will actually tell you, oh yeah, I knew what was going on around me.
they
I just
heard.
can't say anything. So how many of those people are being euthanized?
Almost 4% of the cases involved people who had no physical suffering of any kind. 40 cases of mental health. So if somebody you think is a little bit wacky, we see people that I think are a little bit wacky walking past this building every day. I see people right here at this table that are
Well,
wacky.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Right. But
This is scary, though. If they're harvesting organs, they're euthanizing just to harvest organs. It's just what's next?
But no, it's not surprising, because honestly, if we can kill the most helpless, defenseless people,
Right.
unborn babies,
this is part of it.
this is just an extension of that.
That's why I keep telling people, I don't want to hear anybody who's pro-choice raise an objection to this stuff. Because when you legalize abortion, this is what you get. This is a natural, inevitable extension of the legalization of abortion. You have to take everything with it.
It shows you have no respect for life,
No
any
respect
form
whatsoever.
of life whatsoever.
Now, when we come back from RoeBots, which we're about to do right now, when we come back from RoeBots, we're going to be joining Mark Harrington, who's talking about the issue of fetal disposal. And that's a big issue, and it's been a big issue for a long time. We've talked about it here several times and reported on some of the things that Harrington and his group, Created Equal, have done. But anyway, right now it's time for RoeBots, so let's take a moment out for that, and then we'll be back.
In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized abortion nationwide. The decision is called Roe versus Wade, and those who defend it are known as RoeBots. This is how they think.
You say that someone cannot be a Christian and pro-choice, but it is not up to you to decide who is a Christian and who is not.
This is pure pro-choice gibberish. If someone points to a camel and calls it a turtle, those who challenge them on it are not contending that they get to decide which creatures are camels and which are turtles. They are simply saying that they can tell the difference between the two. That same dynamic applies here. No one in the pro-life movement has the right to decide who gets to be a Christian and who does not, but we can discern one from the other. Think about this. A few years ago, a television documentary about the exploding pornography business in America featured a man who is generally acknowledged to be the nation's porn king. He puts out an unbelievable volume of the raunchiest videos imaginable, and the theme of each one is the submission, domination, exploitation, and degradation of women. During this interview, this porn king was wearing a necklace with a large gold cross on it. And in a clip from one of his videos, one of his actresses was shown performing a series of perverted and degrading sexual acts, and she too was wearing a cross around her neck. When the pornographer and this young woman were asked how they could reconcile their behaviors with the crosses they were wearing, both said that their religious beliefs and their jobs were two separate issues, and that doing hardcore porn does not mean you can't be a good Christian. The regrettable thing is, this same attitude is also rampant within the modern American church. It is now in such an advanced state of decay that someone's claim to be a Christian is often seen as unconnected to their behavior. And those who point out the absurdity of this can be expected to be attacked for being dogmatic and judgmental. But I'm not buying it. And I challenge anyone to tell me the difference between someone who supports legalized abortion while claiming to be a Christian and the porn king with a cross dangling from his neck. The fact is, there isn't any difference. Any heretic can claim to be a Christian, and most of them do, but their actions will inevitably expose them as frauds. In this case, when choice is defined as the right to butcher defenseless children created by God, there can be no such thing as a pro-choice Christian. And the pro-life movement's ability to point that out does not mean that we are making that distinction. We are simply pointing it out. In other words, we can tell the difference between a camel and a turtle. Welcome back. You know, when you butcher people by the millions, one of the problems you've got is you got to get rid of the bodies.
Yes.
You got to dispose of the corpses, right?
Right.
The Germans ran into that problem, and they made the gas chambers for that.
If it doesn't go to
I mean, the ovens.
The sewer.
the sewer or selling their body parts.
Right, that's right. And our buddy here from Created Equal is Mark Harrington. Hello, Mark.
How you doing?
I am doing fine, sir. How are you doing?
Doing great.
How are things in Columbus, Ohio today?
No, they're wonderful.
Are they really?
92 degrees. That's good for us.
You're going to be hotter in Columbus today than we're going to be here because we got rain,
Yeah.
but we need it.
Well,
Yes.
unlike you guys, we know the winter's on the way.
Yeah, right,
That's true.
right. Well, you can have my share of that. I've been to Ohio during the winter. It's not a
No, you don't want to be here.
it's not a happy situation. Just like you probably don't want to be here in the middle of July in Texas.
No.
It's
I
100.
can deal with heat. It's a lot easier to cool down than it is to warm up,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Listen, the abortion lobby, or abortion industry in this case, is having a whole lot of problems. Part of it brought on by you, because you're such a kind of a hellraiser, I guess is the right word, getting rid of the dead bodies. And these companies keep on going to work for these people and then quitting because of the pressure that's being put on them. One of them that you brought up, I can't remember the guy's name, Renee and I even called and had a conversation with him.
Trey.
And he wound up...
Ray Henritzy from
Yes.
Biohaz Solutions
Right.
in Pennsylvania.
Well, he
Yeah.
wound up basically hanging up on us
Surprise,
because
surprise.
I kind of backed him into a corner on something. But, you know, these guys want to act like, and some of them have even said they're doing this out of their Christian faith. I know you've encountered that.
Right.
Can you give us your lowdown on what's going on here with all these people that are quitting the abortion industry and hauling off the dead bodies?
Well, to go back a little bit, and I don't want to go too far, I'll give you the full-scale report here, but we all remember the videos that were leaked showing Renee Chillian, who's an abortion clinic owner in Michigan at the National Abortion Federation, speaking about how these medical waste companies, or she called them incineration companies, if they were to run out of the ability to contract with these people, that the abortion industry would be shut down. Well, those words were music to my ears. I mean, I heard that and I said, well, they're giving us a way forward on how to put the pinch on these facilities. And so we launched Project Weak Link in 2015, along with the report from our Attorney General here in Ohio, Mike DeWine, who found that Stericycle, who's the largest medical waste service provider in the world, was contracting with Planned Parenthood to dispose of aborted babies by throwing them in landfills here in Ohio. So we started Project Weak Link, and we went against Stericycle in early 2016. They sued us, and 6 months later, with the help of the Thomas More Society out of Chicago, we won that lawsuit. But in that, they disclosed in the pleadings that they had canceled 400 contracts with abortion facilities across the country. And so we saw that as a victory. However, we were still getting reports from different parts of the country, albeit fewer, that Stericycle was still showing up. And so we continued our efforts against them, and they are still, at some level, involved. And of course, you know, Mark, it's not just about the aborted babies; it's about enabling altogether.
Right.
If any company is enabling the abortion industry to survive, then they should be on our list to pressure. So it wasn't just about the aborted babies; it was about anything they were doing. You know, the instruments to kill the babies, whatever. It was any kind of involvement in the abortion industry. To us, was a reason to continue to expose them to the public. But one by one, we've seen these companies fall by the wayside. Operation Rescue's had some success. We've had some success. The bottom line is they're not ideologically tied to abortion for the most part. It's just about money to them. I mean, and if you can, and public relations. I mean, it's important that they keep a good standing in the community as being a medical or health provider. And if you can tie them to the dirty deeds of the grisly operations of abortion, that's no one wants that. And so that's what we did, and we're having some success. It's difficult to keep up with them, I can tell you that, because as you can imagine, they're trying to figure out ways to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know, we saw this. We were involved in trying to. We were working with Troy at Operation Rescue several years ago, in what we were calling a collaborators project. In other words, going after all the people that, like you were saying, not only the people that operate these businesses, but the people that make it possible for them to operate these businesses. Right. And we had success just doing things like going after the linen companies and anybody, the banks or whoever that were helping, that were basically collaborators. George Tiller in Wichita, Kansas, I'm sure you're aware of this, he actually put in his own incinerator. Right. And if you were a sidewalk counselor or just a protester in front of George Tiller's facility, you could literally look there and see the smoke from his incinerator, and if you were standing there, ashes from those babies would fall on you as you were on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And the first time we sent a film crew up there from Life Talk, Danny, who was working for us at the time, came back and talked about that. You could smell the death, you could see the smoke, and then you'd see ashes on top of your shoulders, falling on you.
Sad.
So these people, you hear people say we shouldn't compare them to Nazis. Why shouldn't we compare them to Nazis? How are they different? I challenge anybody to tell me how they're different. Do you know how they're different, Mark?
Definitely not in this way. I mean.
No.
You think about the crematoria. You think about the firing squads, the mass slaughter, and then the disposal, or at least attempts to dispose of them by incineration. I mean, by these huge ovens. Stericycle owns several of these around the country, and they bring the dead bodies in to incinerate or to burn them up in these huge heaters. So what's different about that than what's happening in Nazi Germany in the 1930s and 40s?
There's nothing different about it. I'd love to have some pro-abort who'd be willing to come on here and tell me what the difference is. And don't tell me it's because this is legal and that was illegal. What the Nazis were doing at all these death camps, whether you're talking about Auschwitz or Treblinka or Belsen or wherever it is, was perfectly legal. Mm-hmm. They made the rules and they made it legal. They weren't doing anything that was illegal by their rules. Now, of course, the international community looked at it a little bit different, which is why we had the Nuremberg trials after World War II. And let's also remember that there were collaborators who were put on trial, people from I.G. Farben and others that were put on trial at Nuremberg who never killed anybody.
Exactly, just because they were involved.
They were participants. Yeah. And so, I challenged, I think this is the argument I made with the guy, what was his name, Trey or whatever, when we called him.
Trey Krell.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
From Biomedical Waste. Yeah.
And he's trying to give me this nonsense about they're not participants in this. And I asked him, I said, listen, was the train conductor who drove the trains into Auschwitz, was he a participant? And he would never answer this question because he realized that he was a participant on the same level with abortion that train conductor was or that train engineer was. Right. In the Jews that were being taken into Auschwitz or whatever.
Well, I mean, it's just like what the formal Stericycle waste truck driver said that they would. I watched them pull the babies out of the freezer with gloves on, put it in the red bag, which is the bag they supposed to, and tape the box closed. I didn't want to look at it. all. I didn't want to look at it. That's
What
just,
does that tell you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
and they can try to hide what they're doing, but people know what they're doing.
They're mobbed up in it. And so Stericycle and all these other companies that you guys have identified, and this guy that we talked on the phone,
Yeah.
they're as guilty of this as the abortionist is. And I don't know. And of course, Mark, we've had other instances. We had one here in Oklahoma a few years back where this abortionist who eventually murdered his wife and went to prison for that. Show you what kind of guy he was. But they caught him just going out. They were collecting the dead bodies in their refrigerator at the abortion clinic, and then taking them out to this field near the place and just dumping them out in the field. This is how ghastly these people are.
Right.
I mean,
Well, this what the waste truck driver said, it just reminds me of the church, sing a little louder,
Exactly.
Just shut it out. Just
Right.
shut it out. That's all we can do.
yeah, that's right. And again, I want to encourage, I'm glad you brought that up. People need to go onto YouTube and watch that. That is still, to me, one of the most powerful pro-life things I've ever seen was the video that they did, the Sing a Little Louder video. And I really want to encourage, it's, about 12 minutes long, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Be the best 12 minutes you ever
watching.
spent. Have you seen that video, Mark?
Yes, of course.
And does it have the same impact on you that it does on me, that this is parallel to abortion? I don't care what anybody says.
Absolutely. It reminds me of the picture of that Eisenhower commissioned the U.S. Army to take of the inhabitants of Auschwitz. He forced them to walk by the piled bodies of Jews, and they're all turning away. They're averting their gaze, putting their hands up against their eyes or mouth as they're walking by. It's the same thing. It's just being repeated now with the abortion Holocaust.
There's another parallel too, and Patton was the one that ordered them to do that when he liberated those camps over there. But there's another parallel here too. All of those people that were near those death camps that were forced to go by, and actually some of them were forced to pull bodies out of the death camps and pile
They
them up.
made the SS do that.
Right. They now have claimed for all the 70 years or so since the end of the war that they didn't know about what was going on. They are liars. They knew exactly what was going on. They just chose to look the other way. And that's the way the American people are right now. And there's going to come a time, and I've said this many, many, many times in the past, there's going to come a time at some point in the future when people are going to look back at the abortion Holocaust with the same horror that we look back on slavery or the Nazi Holocaust and say, how could people do that? And how could people stand around and look at it and ignore it? Yeah. And the American people, there's going to be a ton of American people that are going to jump up here and say, oh, we didn't have any idea what was going on. They're liars.
Or, their excuse, it's not a human being. Well, look at sonograms. Science is on our side. It clearly shows that the preborn are human beings.
They're living human beings from the moment of fertilization. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining us, Mark. I know you're busy and we'll let you go here. And I want to really encourage you to keep up the pressure. And if you need anything from us, just let us know. And if something big happens, let us know. We'll put you back on here to talk about it.
Well, yeah, just stay after them. I mean, it's kind of a game of whack-a-mole.
Right.
In the sense that it's the same battle we fight with closing abortion mills, but we're closing them.
That's
and
right.
We're getting these companies to stop enabling abortionists, and therefore they're resorting, as they did, in the early days, to using dumpsters and other means. And when they do that, you can catch them and you bust them. And you shut them down, and that's the whole thing we're trying to do. Just one last thing, Mark, that I think your viewers need to be aware of. Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry isn't going to they're not going to sit down and take this.
No.
And I mentioned, years ago, I said, well, they're going to try to come up with a fix. My prediction was Planned Parenthood would start building crematorium of their own medical waste companies. And I don't know if you saw this report from Live Action, a 92-page report on TerraHealth. It's ominous. I mean, they are raising money for lots of things, but one of them is to create their own bio-waste companies. So this is the future. If they're going to solve this problem, they realize the Stericycles of the world are going to go away because they don't want the publicity. they're going to have to create their own. And so we've got to stay ahead of them, and we've got to keep shutting these things down. It's going to be a long. They've got the long game in mind here. So we've got to stay on them. And if they can't dispose of the babies, they can't kill them. I mean, the bottom line. I mean, and if they do kill them, they're going to do it illegally, and we're going to catch them at it.
Yep, that's right. You're exactly right. So basically what you're saying is always been the principle that we operate on here at Life Dynamics. If they don't see the light, make sure they feel the heat. So
Exactly.
that's what we have to continue doing. And I appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and I want to encourage you to continue. Anyway, keep us posted.
Thank you,
All righty,
Mark.
thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us
Bye.
today.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Love it.
He's right. If they don't see the light, we have to make them feel the heat.
That's right.
And feeling the heat is what's causing them to shut down.
Yeah.
But they're going to use Tiller, and that's why I brought up the situation with Tiller as an example. They're going to use him as an example of what can be done. So you come up with a little low-cost incinerator on site that you install, and you think about it. I hate to even bring this up, but one of the big advantages they have is they're dealing with tiny bodies. It isn't like they're having to cremate if they have their own little incinerator. They're having to cremate 6 foot tall, 250-pound people.
Right.
They're only dealing with these little tiny bodies, and they'll be relatively easy to cremate. Yeah. I wouldn't be a bit surprised, not even remotely surprised, that they're working with someone out there right now to develop an on-site mini incinerator that they can put in every abortion clinic.
Yeah.
I wonder how his neighbors, though, felt breathing in the ashes of the dead babies when they walk outside.
Well, they have money on their side, but we have God on our side. So,
Right.
Well, not just that, but we have science, we have morality.
But,
We're
yeah,
not
but
snakes,
you're right.
that they are.
But I would want to say one thing. We don't have God on our side. We're on God's side.
Well, that's true. But
God doesn't choose
Right.
sides.
Yeah.
So technically,
It's just a matter of time before he says enough is enough.
I think this whole abortion holocaust, 60 million dead babies plus, is a testament to God's patience. Because I agree. Why hasn't he already said, I've had it with you guys. Enough is enough. Because if we think, and I've said this a million times before, if we think we can escape judgment for this, we are whistling past the graveyard. We don't have a clue what God's about if we think that he's not going to judge America for this, because he is.
Right.
And
I agree.
so I want to make sure that when the time comes that we can look up here and say, God, we were on your side. We were doing the best we knew how to do. We were working hard. And I'll tell you, again, going back to the funeral that we went to Friday with Jeremiah's funeral, that was one of the messages that I got out of that, was that we need to make sure this young man, to refresh people's memory, when he was granted a wish, what he could have,
Right.
16-year-old, most 16-year-olds, most adults are going to wish for something for themselves. Oh, I want to go to Disney World, or I want to meet some famous star or something.
Right.
This young man asked to speak to the governor of Texas
Yes.
and get his commitment that he would throw all the resources of the governor's office behind protecting the unborn in Texas.
Right.
That's what this young man wanted, and he got it.
Yes.
And Governor Abbott spoke with him by phone, and when he said that was his wish, and Governor Abbott said, your wish is granted.
Right.
And
Now we'll see.
and he sent a representative to
the
his
funeral.
funeral and presented him with a flag.
Right. So
Very neat.
now it was an amazing thing. And I want to encourage people to go and look at that. And I also want to encourage you to go look at the Sing a Little Louder video that you brought up earlier.
Yes.
Because that's a very impacting video, and it's something we need to be showing. And it's particularly something that needs to be shown. I think it should be shown at the beginning of every church service in America every Sunday until these people do
Well,
something.
you know that's not going to
Yeah.
happen,
Oh,
right?
really?
Because
You think?
the majority of these, especially the mega churches,
They're not
don't
interested.
want to have to deal with that.
They're not
Yeah.
interested. Anything? Got anything?
I don't have anything. The only thing I do have is if you have any comments, questions, or any kind of show ideas that you'd like us to
Right.
talk about, let us know. There's many, many ways to get in touch with us.
Yep. And Renee's information's up on the screen, so she's the gargoyle that keeps all the information. So, and yeah, we'd love to have all of our readers comment, give us questions, show ideas, anything. Send us a text, email, smoke signal, whatever it is. You got anything, Sheila? Anybody on Instagram that we need to talk about?
They can watch Live Talk TV on YouTube, our YouTube page, Facebook. We have a Twitter, and then they, can always go to lifedynamics.com.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Until next Tuesday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you next week.